I walk through my front door at 11:07 on a Tuesday night. I know the exact time because I keep checking my phone, unable to process that Eleanor is really gone. 18 hours at the hospital. 18 hours holding her papery hand, singing hymns she taught me, watching her chest rise and fall until it just stopped. My shoes are still on. I never wear shoes past the entryway. Eleanor hated the sound of heels on her grandmother's hardwood, but I'm too numb to remember, too hollowed out to care. I climb the stairs to what I thought was our bedroom, Brandon's and mine, and that's when I see them. 4 people sitting in my bedroom like it's a conference room, like they belong here, and I don't. Brandon is in the velvet reading chair by the window, the one Eleanor used every Sunday morning with her coffee and crossword puzzle. Vanessa, his cousin, perches on the edge of my side of the bed, still wearing her real estate blazer at nearly midnight. Derek stands by my dresser, arms crossed, his CPA face blank and unreadable. And there's a man I've never seen before. Silver hair, expensive suit, leather folder open on the writing desk. "Sophia," Brandon says. His voice is flat, not grieving, not comforting, just empty. I stand in the doorway, hands still on the knob. "What's going on?" The stranger stands and extends his hand like we're meeting for coffee. "Ms. Bennett, I'm Stuart Chambers, attorney for the Hayes Family Trust. I apologize for the timing, but there are urgent matters regarding Mrs. Eleanor Hayes' estate that require immediate attention." I look at Brandon, search his face for the man who held me last week when Eleanor stopped eating, who whispered, "We're in this together," while I cried. His eyes slide away from mine. Vanessa speaks next, her voice dripping with that practiced realtor sympathy. "Sophia, we know this is difficult, but Grandma Eleanor left very specific instructions." The man, Chambers, opens his folder with a crisp snap. Mrs. Hayes' last will and testament, executed 6 months ago, leaves the entirety of her estate to her grandson, Brandon Michael Hayes. This includes the property at 847 Maple Street, all financial assets and personal effects. The words hit me like separate objects. Will, estate, Brandon, 6 months ago. There is, however, a provision acknowledging your service. His tone shifts like he's reading a footnote. Mrs. Hayes specified a one-time payment of $1,500 for your caregiving contributions. Someone is laughing, high and sharp and ugly. It takes me a full 3 seconds to realize the sound is coming from me. 9 years, I whisper. I gave her 9 years. Derek finally speaks, his voice all business. "The property needs to be secured for estate processing. We'll need you to vacate within 24 hours. I stare at the bed. The wedding ring quilt I washed every 2 weeks. The prescription bottles I organized by time and dosage in rainbow order because it made Eleanor smile. The baby monitor on the nightstand so I could hear if she called for me at 3 in the morning. 24 hours. Brandon still won't look at me. I don't cry. Don't scream. Don't beg. I walk to the closet, my closet, where my clothes have hung for 9 years, and pull out my single battered suitcase. I start folding sweaters in silence while 4 people sit in my bedroom watching me like I'm the intruder. I leave at 1:30 in the morning. Drive to the Super 8 off Highway 19. Sit on the scratchy floral bedspread in a room that smells like bleach and old cigarettes, staring at the blue metal lockbox in my hands. The lockbox Eleanor pressed into my palm 3 days before she slipped away. Her fingers, so thin they felt like bird bones, had surprising strength when they closed around mine. "Not now," she'd whispered, her voice barely audible over the hospital machines. "When it's time, Sophia. You'll know when." I know now. I know because the man I spent 9 years with just kicked me out of my home with a stranger's signature and 24 hours notice. Because they valued 9 years of my life, of bathing Eleanor when she couldn't do it herself, of singing her to sleep when she was frightened, of holding her hand when she took her last breath, at $1,500. Have you ever had your entire life reduced to a number? Have you ever been erased while you're still standing right there? My hands shake as I fit the small brass key into the lock. But to understand what I'm about to find, what Eleanor knew I'd need, I have to take you back to where this all started. Back to before the funeral, before the hospital, before I understood what the people I trusted were really planning. Let me tell you how a 67-year-old former English teacher ended up in a motel room at 2 a.m, about to open a box that would change everything. 9 years earlier, I was 58 years old and convinced my best chapters were already written. My husband Richard had been gone for 3 years, cancer, quick and brutal, and our daughter lived in Seattle with her own family. I'd retired from teaching at 56. 31 years of grading essays and managing teenage drama had left my back aching and my patience thin. I thought I was done with purpose, done with feeling needed. I was so wrong. I met Brandon at a community theater production of Our Town. He played the stage manager. I worked costumes backstage because my friend Carol dragged me there, insisting I needed to get out of the house and live a little. Brandon was 44, charming in that easy way some men have. He brought me coffee during rehearsals, made me laugh with stories about his marketing job, asked questions about my teaching career like he was genuinely interested. When he found out I was 14 years older, he shrugged. Age is just a number. Connection is what matters. I wanted to believe him. We dated for 8 months before he mentioned his grandmother. We were having dinner at that Italian place on 5th Street, the one with the red checkered tablecloths, when he said, "Gran's 81 now, still sharp as a tack, but she's getting frail. I worry about her in that big house alone." Eleanor Hayes lived in Willowcrest, a 1904 Victorian on Maple Street that had its own listing in the Historic Register. Brandon had spent childhood summers there, running through rooms with crown molding and original stained glass windows. "She refuses to leave," he said, spinning his wine glass. "But she needs someone, not a nursing home. She'd wither away in one of those places. Just someone who cares." He looked at me with those blue eyes. "You're so patient, Sophia, so good with people. Would you maybe just meet her? Just once?" I met Eleanor on a Tuesday afternoon in October. She was tiny, maybe 4'11" in her orthopedic shoes, with white hair pulled into a perfect silver bun and eyes like a hawk evaluating prey. She didn't interview me. She interrogated me. "Do you read?" she asked before I'd even sat down. Voraciously. "Politics?" "I have opinions." "Religion?" Respectfully. She nodded once. "Brandon says you taught English for 31 years. Favorite book?" "Their Eyes Were Watching God," I said without hesitation, "because it's about a woman who refused to be made small." For the first time, Eleanor smiled. Really smiled. "You'll do." The arrangement was supposed to be temporary. "Just until we figure out long-term care," Brandon said. I'd move into the guest room, a beautiful space with bay windows overlooking the garden, and help Eleanor with daily tasks. Meals, medications, making sure she didn't fall. Brandon would handle expenses. I'd have companionship, purpose, a reason to get up in the morning. I moved in on a Friday in November. Within 2 weeks, Eleanor and I were reading Jane Austen aloud to each other every evening. Within a month, she was teaching me her mother's apple pie recipe, the one with the secret ingredient she'd never told anyone. Within 3 months, I loved that sharp-tongued, brilliant woman like she was my own blood. Brandon visited on weekends. Sometimes, Eleanor and I fell into rhythms that felt like family. Morning coffee on the wraparound porch, even in winter when we'd bundle in blankets. Crossword puzzles at the kitchen table. She was brutal with them, could finish the Sunday Times puzzle in under an hour, old movies on Turner Classic Films. She'd tell me stories about her late husband, about raising Brandon's father alone after being widowed at 40, about building a comfortable life through careful investing and fierce independence. "I never let anyone make me small," she said once, echoing my words from that first day, "not even people who claimed to love me." I should have paid more attention to that. Years passed. Eleanor's arthritis worsened, made her fingers stiff and painful. Then came the heart condition that required daily monitoring. Her memory started slipping, not dementia, her doctor assured us, just the normal fog of aging. I adapted, took over her bill, paying when writing checks became difficult. Managed her medications, 12 different prescriptions with complicated schedules, eventually helped her bathe and dress, tasks that required trust and dignity. She never complained, never made me feel like a servant. We were partners. Brandon proposed in year 5. Sort of. We were having lunch at a diner when he said, "We should make this official, get married. You'd inherit everything easier that way if something happens to Gran." The words landed wrong, made my stomach turn. "I want to wait until Eleanor's more stable," I said. He didn't push it. I told myself that meant he understood. Now I know it meant he was already planning something else. Vanessa and Derek had been ghost relatives for most of Eleanor's life. Birthday cards signed with printed labels, phone calls on major holidays that lasted 5 minutes, but in year 7, they suddenly started appearing. Vanessa came first. "Just checking on Grandma," she'd chirp, then spend an hour photographing the house's gorgeous original details with her phone. She'd pepper Eleanor with questions about property values, about her investment portfolio, about what your plans are for all this. Eleanor would get quiet after these visits, withdrawn. She'd sit in her reading chair and stare out the window without speaking. Then Derek started showing up too, always with papers. "Just updating your financial information, Grandma. For tax purposes." He'd disappear into Eleanor's office, her private sanctuary, for hours. I'd hear the file cabinets opening, the printer running. I mentioned it to Brandon one Saturday. "Isn't it strange that they're suddenly so involved?" "They're family," he said, not looking up from his phone. "Isn't it good they're finally stepping up?" Something in his voice felt wrong, defensive and rehearsed. 8 months before Eleanor died, I noticed documents missing from her desk. The deed to Willowcrest, her investment portfolio summary, the leather address book with her attorney's contact information, a woman named Margaret Chen, who Eleanor had worked with for decades. "Brandon, did you take some of Eleanor's papers?" I asked carefully that night. "Derek's organizing her estate planning," he said. "It's complicated financial stuff. Don't worry about it." But Eleanor was worrying. She started having panic attacks when Derek visited. She'd grab my wrist with surprising strength and whisper, "Don't leave me alone with him. Please, Sophia, don't leave me." I didn't. I stayed in the room during every visit, positioned myself between Eleanor and whoever had come to see her. 2 weeks before she died, Eleanor had one of her increasingly rare lucid moments. We were alone in her room, truly alone, Brandon at work, no cousins circling, when she gripped my hand so hard it hurt. "Sophia, listen to me." Her eyes were crystal clear, more focused than they'd been in months. "Don't let them take it, any of it. Do you understand?" "Take what, Eleanor?" "Everything I built, everything I want you to have." She reached under her pillow with shaking hands and pulled out a blue metal lockbox I'd never seen before. "There's a hiding place, in my closet, under the floorboard beneath the hat boxes." She pressed something into my palm, a small brass key, warm from being clutched in her hand. "When I'm gone, when they show you papers, when they tell you lies, you go there, you find this box, you open it." Her voice was urgent, almost fierce. "Promise me, Sophia. Promise." "I promise." Footsteps sounded on the stairs. Eleanor's face shifted instantly, back to the vague confusion that had become her mask. "Not now," she whispered as Brandon appeared in the doorway. "When it's time, you'll know." I slipped the key into my pocket. Brandon didn't notice. He was already looking at his phone. 3 days later, Eleanor slipped into unconsciousness. The doctor said it was the heart finally giving out, that she wasn't in pain. I never left her bedside. I held her hand and sang Amazing Grace and told her stories about all the books we'd read together, all the pies we'd baked, all the mornings we'd watched the sunrise with our coffee. Brandon came once, stayed 20 minutes, said he couldn't handle hospitals. When Eleanor died, when her hand went slack in mine and the machine started their terrible chorus, I kissed her forehead and whispered, "I won't let them make me small. I promise." I didn't know then what that promise would cost, what I'd discover when I finally opened that lockbox. But I was about to find out. The lockbox opens with a soft click that sounds too loud in the silent motel room. It's 2:47 a.m. according to the digital clock on the nightstand, its red numbers glowing like angry eyes. Inside, I find a thick manila envelope, a smaller sealed envelope with my name written in Eleanor's elegant cursive, a USB drive, and a leather journal I've never seen before. My hands are shaking so badly I almost drop everything. I open the journal first. Eleanor's handwriting fills the pages, shaky in the recent entries but unmistakably hers. The first entry is dated 3 years ago. March 15th. Brandon brought papers today, said it was a simple update to my will. But when I read it carefully with my magnifying glass, it transfers primary power of attorney to him, not Sophia. I pretended my hand was too tired to sign. He doesn't know I can still read fine print when I take my time. I need to call Margaret. My heart stops. 3 years ago. She knew 3 years ago. March 22nd. Called Margaret Chen from Sophia's phone while she was at the grocery store. Changed my will completely. Everything to Sophia. She's earned it. She's loved me. Brandon only loves what I own. April 10th. Derek asked about my investment accounts again. Just routine, he said. But I saw him photographing documents when he thought I was napping. I moved the real files. He got the decoys with fake numbers. Page after page, entry after entry. Eleanor documenting everything, every suspicious visit, every routine question that wasn't routine at all. Every time Brandon promised to come visit and didn't. Every time Vanessa measured rooms while pretending to admire the architecture. June 3rd. Heard Vanessa on the phone in the hallway. She said, "The property's worth at least $900K. We just need to wait." Wait for what? For me to die? I'm not dead yet, Vanessa. Tears blur my vision. Eleanor wasn't confused. She wasn't declining. She was investigating her own family like a detective. The manila envelope contains legal documents. I spread them across the cheap floral bedspread with shaking hands. Last will and testament of Eleanor Margaret Hayes, dated 3 years, 2 months, and 8 days ago. Notarized with an official seal, witnessed by Margaret Chen and someone named Robert Pacheco. I read it 3 times before my brain can process the words. I leave my entire estate, including the property located at 847 Maple Street, all financial assets, personal property, and investment portfolios, to Sophia Marie Bennett, in recognition of her devoted care, genuine companionship, and the dignity she has preserved in my final years. She is the daughter I never had, and the family I chose. The room tilts. I grip the edge of the mattress to steady myself. There are specific provisions listed below. $25,000 divided between various charities, her jewelry collection to her church, and then one line that makes my breath catch in my throat. To my grandson Brandon Michael Hayes and his cousins Vanessa Hayes Morrison and Derek Hayes, I leave the sum of $1 each to make clear that their exclusion is intentional and not an oversight. They know why. $1 each. The USB drive is labeled in Eleanor's careful handwriting. For Margaret Chen and law enforcement if needed. I don't have a laptop. At 3:15 in the morning, I'm driving to the 24-hour FedEx office on Route 9, paying $12 to use their public computer, my hands still trembling as I plug in the drive. The files load slowly. Bank statements showing $847,000 in liquid assets across 3 accounts. Investment portfolio worth $1.2 million. The deed to Willowcrest, fully paid off, recently appraised at $890,000. Insurance policies, medical records proving Eleanor's mental competency. And then, photographs, pictures of documents I've never seen. A fake will, the one they showed me tonight, with Eleanor's signature forged so badly I can see where the pen pressure is wrong, where the tremor doesn't match her real hand. There's a notepad photographed with Derek's handwriting. Need to move fast after funeral. Have attorney ready. S will be too emotional to fight immediately. 24-hour eviction gives her no time to think. My stomach lurches. I taste bile. Text message screenshots between Brandon and Vanessa, printed and scanned into the file. Brandon. She's at the hospital 24/7 now. Perfect time to get everything in place. Vanessa. Stuart says he can backdate the documents. $5,000 for the notary seal. Cheap. Brandon. What about Sophia? Vanessa. $500 is generous for a glorified housekeeper. She'll take it and leave quietly. She's got no proof otherwise. Brandon. You're sure? Vanessa. She's a retired teacher living on a pension. She can't afford lawyers. She'll fold. I sit in that FedEx office, fluorescent lights humming overhead, the printer whirring somewhere in the background, reading messages from a man I shared a bed with for 9 years. A man who watched me cry over Eleanor's decline and was simultaneously planning how to steal from both of us. Have you ever seen proof that someone you loved never actually loved you back? That you were just a tool? A key to unlock something valuable? The small, sealed envelope is last. My hands leave damp marks on the paper as I open it. Eleanor's personal stationery, her monogram at the top. The handwriting is shaky, written recently, probably in those final weeks. My dearest Sophia, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I suspect my vultures have circled as planned. I've known for 3 years what Brandon, Vanessa, and Derek were planning. I'm 84 years old and dying, but I'm not stupid. Everything in this box is yours, not just legally, but morally. You earned every bit of it, not through blood or manipulation, but through showing up, through love, through the 1,000 small dignities you gave me when I couldn't bathe myself or remember what day it was. Don't let them make you small, Sophia. That's what they're counting on. That you'll be too shocked, too hurt, too tired to fight back. Margaret Chen has all the original documents. Her number is in this box. She's been my attorney for 30 years, and she's a pit bull in pearls. She's been ready for this fight since I first called her 3 years ago. The house, the money, all of it. It's not a gift. It's what you're owed for giving me the most dignified, loving final years anyone could ask for. Take it. Fight for it. Win. And then live, sweetheart. Live so big and so boldly that I can feel it wherever I am. All my love, Eleanor. I cry in that FedEx office until a concerned employee, a young man with kind eyes who can't be more than 20, asks if I need help. No, I say, carefully folding everything back into the lockbox. But they will. At 6 a.m., I call the number for Margaret Chen. An answering service picks up. I leave a message, my voice surprisingly steady. This is Sophia Bennett. Eleanor Hayes died yesterday. Her family presented me with a fraudulent will last night and gave me 24 hours to vacate. I have the lockbox. Please call me immediately. She calls back at 6:47 a.m. I'm sitting in my car in the FedEx parking lot, watching the sunrise turn the sky pink and gold. I've been expecting your call, Margaret says. Her voice is crisp, professional, and absolutely furious. And I've been sharpening my knives for 3 years. Tell me everything. I tell her about the bedroom ambush, the fake attorney, the forged will, the 24-hour eviction, the lockbox. All of it spills out like poison I've been holding in. Don't go back to that house, Margaret says firmly. Don't communicate with Brandon, Vanessa, or Derek under any circumstances. Don't respond to threats or attempts to contact you. I'm filing an emergency motion this morning to freeze the estate. By noon today, they won't be able to touch a single penny or sell anything. By Monday, we'll have a court date. How badly do you want to fight, Sophia? I think about Eleanor's hands in mine, about 9 years of 2 a.m. medication calls and Sunday crosswords and teaching her how to FaceTime with her church friends, about her whispering, "Don't let them make you small." I want to destroy them, I say quietly. Margaret laughs. It's the sound of a predator spotting wounded prey. Good. Get some rest if you can. This is going to be a battle, but we have every weapon we need. And Sophia? They just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They underestimated you. I can't rest. At 9 a.m., my phone starts ringing. Brandon. I silence it. Then Vanessa. Then a number I don't recognize, probably their fake attorney. Text messages flood in. Brandon. Sophia, please answer. We need to talk about this reasonably. Brandon. You're upset. I understand. But the $1,500 was just a starting point. We can negotiate. Brandon. Don't do anything stupid. Gran wanted this. You have to respect her wishes. I want to respond. Want to tell him I know everything. Margaret warned me not to. Let them sweat, she said. Let them think they got away with it. The panic will make them sloppy. At 10:15 a.m., Brandon shows up at the motel. I watch through the window as he knocks on my door, calls my name. His voice sounds desperate, almost frightened. He finally leaves a note under my windshield wiper. I photograph it for evidence. Don't read it. Throw it away. At 11:30 a.m., Margaret calls again. Motion granted. Estate completely frozen. They can't sell, transfer, access, or modify anything. Brandon just called my office screaming that I had no right to interfere. His attorney, the real one he hired to help with the forgery, has already withdrawn from representation. Rats and sinking ships, you know? What happens now? Now we file the real will for probate. We notify the district attorney of the forgery. We get restraining orders. And we watch them scramble. Margaret pauses. Sophia, you taught high school for 31 years. You know how to deal with bullies, right? I think about the hundreds of students who tried to intimidate me, manipulate me, cheat their way through my classes. About the ones who learned the hard way that quiet people are often the most dangerous when pushed. Yes, I say. I know exactly how to handle bullies. Then let's show them what happens when you underestimate a woman who spent 3 decades managing teenagers. These grown children don't stand a chance. By noon, the local news has picked up the story. Probate fraud alleged in historic Willowcrest estate. My phone explodes with messages from people I haven't heard from in years. Neighbors, Eleanor's church friends, former students. We always knew something was off about Brandon. Eleanor told me you were her real family. If you need anything, we're here. The community is rallying, but Brandon's family is preparing to strike back. At 2 p.m., I get a call from a journalist. Ms. Bennett, Brandon Hayes' mother gave us a statement claiming you isolated Eleanor from her family and manipulated a vulnerable elderly woman. Would you like to comment? No comment, I say, exactly as Margaret instructed. But inside, I'm screaming, this is just the beginning. They're going to try to destroy my reputation before I can destroy their lies. I look at the lockbox sitting on the motel dresser, at Eleanor's letter, at the evidence she spent 3 years collecting. They think I'm a quiet, retired teacher who'll disappear quietly. They have no idea what's coming. Margaret Chen's law office is everything I expected and nothing I'm prepared for. Dark mahogany paneling, leather chairs that probably cost more than my first car, walls lined with legal books and framed credentials from Harvard Law. Margaret herself is 62, barely 5 feet tall in her expensive heels, wearing a charcoal gray suit that screams power with the sharpest eyes I've ever seen. Let's see what we're working with, she says, spreading the lockbox contents across her massive conference table like a general surveying a battlefield. We spend 4 hours going through everything, every bank statement, every text message screenshot, every page of Eleanor's journal. Margaret makes notes in precise handwriting, occasionally pausing to smile, small, predatory smiles that make me grateful she's on my side. Eleanor was brilliant, Margaret says finally. She didn't just document their behavior. She built a prosecutable case, forged wills, fake notarizations, conspiracy to commit fraud and theft. This isn't just civil court, Sophia. We're talking criminal charges. My stomach flips. Criminal? They forged legal documents. They conspired to steal a multi-million-dollar estate. They attempted to defraud you of your rightful inheritance through intimidation and fabricated evidence. Margaret looks at me directly. This is felony territory. We're not just taking back what's yours. We're sending them to prison. The word hangs in the air. Prison. Brandon in prison. The man I slept beside for 9 years. How did Eleanor get all this? I ask, pointing to the text message screenshots, the photographs of their planning documents. She hired a private investigator 8 months before she died, Margaret explains. Robert Pacheco. He was one of the witnesses on the real will. When Derek started spending too much time in Eleanor's office, going through her files, she got suspicious. Robert installed monitoring software on the home computer that Derek used. Completely legal with Eleanor's permission, since it was her house, her equipment. So Eleanor saw everything. Everything. She watched them plan to rob both of you in real time. She was building a case, gathering evidence, protecting you. She just ran out of time to execute it herself. Margaret's expression softens for the first time. So, she made sure you could finish what she started. What do we do first? Margaret pulls out a yellow legal pad. First, we file the real will for probate. That starts the official legal process and establishes you as the rightful heir. Second, we file fraud charges with the district attorney. I know her personally. She hates elder abuse cases. Third, we get emergency restraining orders against all 3 of them. They're barred from the property, from contacting you, from accessing any of Eleanor's accounts. Fourth, we notify Stuart Chambers, their fake attorney, that he's under investigation for notary fraud and conspiracy. Will that work? Margaret's smile is wolfish. Chambers will crack in about 30 seconds. His entire practice is small-time estate work and real estate closings. When he realizes he could be disbarred and face criminal charges, he'll flip on them faster than you can say, plea deal. These people aren't criminal masterminds, Sophia. They're greedy amateurs who thought an old woman and her caregiver would be easy targets. We file everything that afternoon. Emergency motions, fraud complaints, restraining orders. Margaret's assistant, a fierce woman named Patricia, handles the paperwork with military efficiency. By 5 p.m., Brandon receives his restraining order. Patricia calls to tell us he became extremely emotional when the process server showed up at Willowcrest, at what he thought was his newly inherited house. By 6 p.m., the local news has updated their story. Criminal fraud charges filed in Willowcrest estate case. By 7 p.m., my phone is exploding again. Not from Brandon. He's legally prohibited from contacting me. But from everyone else. Neighbors who always suspected something was wrong. Eleanor's church friends who remember me sitting with her every Sunday. Former colleagues from my teaching days. We always thought Brandon was using you to get to Eleanor. That man never visited her unless he wanted something. Eleanor used to tell me at coffee hour that you were the best thing that ever happened to her. The support is overwhelming. And then come the other messages. Brandon's mother, Eleanor's daughter-in-law, who I met exactly twice in 9 years, gives an interview to Channel 7 News. I watch it on the motel TV, my hands clenched into fists. Sophia isolated Eleanor from her family, she says, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. She manipulated a vulnerable elderly woman who wasn't thinking clearly. My son Brandon is the victim here. He's devastated. The lies make my blood boil. Vanessa starts a social media campaign. Posts on Facebook about elder abuse and gold diggers who prey on dying women and The real story the media refuses to investigate. She never uses my name directly. Her lawyer probably warned her about defamation, but everyone knows who she means. I want to respond, want to post Eleanor's journal entries, the text messages, everything. Margaret grabs my phone. No, she says firmly. They're desperate and flailing. The more noise they make, the guiltier they look. You stay quiet, dignified, above it all. Let the evidence speak in court where it matters. 2 weeks after Eleanor's funeral, Margaret calls with news. Derek's attorney just contacted me. He wants to make a deal. What kind of deal? Full confession in exchange for reduced charges. He's willing to testify against Brandon and Vanessa, admit to the forgery conspiracy, the embezzlement, all of it, if the DA agrees to a lighter sentence. I'm silent for a moment, processing. Is it true? Did Derek just follow orders? Partly. Derek's a follower, not a leader, weak-willed, easily manipulated, but he still participated. He forged documents, he stole money. He's just smart enough to know he's going to prison and wants the shortest sentence possible. Should we take it? Absolutely. His testimony will seal the case against Brandon and Vanessa. And the DA agrees. Derek gets 5 years, probably serves 3 with good behavior. Brandon and Vanessa are looking at 10 to 15 each. The numbers feel surreal. 10 to 15 years. Brandon would be in his 60s when he got out. But then I remember the text message. She's a glorified housekeeper. She'll fold. I remember being told I had 24 hours to leave the home I'd lived in for 9 years. I remember Eleanor pressing that lockbox into my hands and whispering, "Don't let them make you small." Take the deal, I say. The civil lawsuit moves forward simultaneously. Margaret files for $3.2 million, the full value of Eleanor's estate plus damages for emotional distress, unpaid labor beyond standard caregiving, and intentional infliction of emotional harm. They don't have that kind of money, I point out. I know, but we'll get judgments, wage garnishment for the rest of their lives, liens on any property they ever own. They'll be paying you until they die. Margaret looks at me seriously. This isn't really about the money, is it? No, I admit. It's about making sure they never profit from what they tried to do. Good, because that's exactly what we're going to accomplish. 3 weeks after Eleanor's death, Margaret hands me a set of keys. The court cleared the title. The restraining orders mean they can't enter the property. Willowcrest is officially yours. You can go home. Home. The word catches in my throat. I stand on the wraparound porch, Eleanor's porch, my porch, and cry. The house looks exactly as I left it that horrible night. My clothes still in the closet. Eleanor's reading chair by the window. The crossword puzzles we never finished still stacked on the side table. I walk through every room, remembering. Eleanor teaching me to make pie crust in the kitchen, flour on both our hands, reading aloud in the library, taking turns with different character voices. Her hospital bed in the sunroom during those final weeks, positioned so she could see her beloved garden. In her closet, I find the hiding place. Under the floorboard beneath the hat boxes, just like she said. There's a hollow space there, just big enough for the lockbox. Eleanor had planned everything, prepared everything, protected me even after death. The trial date is set for 6 weeks out. Margaret prepares me like a coach training for the Olympics. Brandon's attorney will try to destroy you on the stand, she warns. They'll paint you as a calculating gold digger who manipulated a confused old woman. You need to be ready for ugly questions. Like what? Isn't it true you isolated Mrs. Hayes from her loving family? Isn't it true you were in a romantic relationship with her grandson specifically to gain access to her assets? Isn't it true you influenced a mentally declining elderly woman to change her will in your favor? Each question feels like a knife. How do I answer? With the truth. You didn't isolate Eleanor. Her family never visited until they wanted something. You didn't romance Brandon for access. You didn't even know Eleanor was wealthy for years. You didn't influence Eleanor. She made her decision based on who actually showed up for her life. Margaret looks at me intently. You're a teacher. You've dealt with hostile teenagers trying to intimidate you for 3 decades. Defense attorneys are just older teenagers in expensive suits. We practice for hours. Margaret playing vicious defense attorney, throwing every cruel question she can imagine. Me learning to stay calm, factual, unshakable, to show emotion without breaking down, to tell my truth without apology. Remember, Margaret says, they want you to get angry, defensive, emotional to the point of seeming unstable. Don't give them that. You're a 67-year-old woman who dedicated 9 years to caring for someone you loved. You have nothing to apologize for. The private investigator, Robert Pacheco, meets with us to review his evidence. He's in his 50s, former NYPD detective, now doing private work. He walks me through the monitoring software, the document analysis, the financial forensics. Eleanor was one of the sharpest clients I've ever had, he says. Most people in her situation would have been in denial. She faced the truth head-on and decided to fight back. She knew exactly what her family was, and she documented everything to protect you. 3 days before trial, Brandon tries one final desperate move. His attorney requests a settlement conference. Margaret and I meet them in a windowless mediation room at the courthouse. Brandon looks terrible. He's lost maybe 20 pounds. His face is gaunt and unshaven. There are dark circles under his eyes. For just one moment, one brief, traitorous moment, I feel something like pity. Then his attorney speaks. My client is willing to accept a plea agreement on reduced charges if Ms. Bennett agrees to split the estate 50-50. The audacity steals my breath. After everything, the forgery, the lies, the eviction, the public smear campaign, they want half. Margaret doesn't even pause. No. Ms. Chen, be reasonable. Your client forged legal documents with the intent to defraud my client of a multi-million-dollar estate after she spent 9 years providing devoted care to his grandmother. He's facing 15 years in prison. There is no settlement. There is no split. There is only consequences. Brandon finally looks directly at me. His eyes are red-rimmed, desperate. Sophia, please. You know I loved Gran. This got out of hand. I made mistakes, but we had 9 years together. Doesn't that mean anything? I remember the text message. What about Sophia? She'll fold. I remember 9 years of thinking I was building a partnership, a family, a life. I remember it was all a lie from the start. No, I say quietly. It doesn't mean anything. Because it was never real, Brandon. I was never your partner. I was just the key to unlock your inheritance. You never saw me. You never loved me. You loved what you thought I could help you steal. That's not... See you in court, Margaret says, standing. This meeting is over. We walk out. Behind us, I hear Brandon start to cry. I don't look back. Outside the courthouse, Margaret turns to me. You ready for this? I think about Eleanor's letter. Don't let them make you small. I think about 9 years of 2 a.m. medication calls and Sunday morning coffee and crossword puzzles and teaching her to video chat with her great nieces. I think about holding her hand when she died and promising her I'd fight. Yes, I say. I'm ready. The courtroom is smaller than I expected. Courtroom 4B in the county courthouse, with fluorescent lights that buzz faintly and wooden benches worn smooth by decades of people waiting for justice. I sit next to Margaret at the plaintiff's table, hands folded in my lap to keep them from shaking. Across the aisle, Brandon, Vanessa, and Derek sit with their court-appointed public defenders. Brandon still won't look at me. Vanessa stares straight ahead, her jaw clenched tight. Derek looks like he might be sick. Judge Patricia Morrison enters, a black woman in her late 50s with silver-streaked hair and an expression that tolerates exactly zero nonsense. Everyone stands. The preliminary hearing is supposed to be procedural, just establishing that there's enough evidence to proceed to trial. But Margaret warned me it would set the tone for everything that follows. Carmen Rodriguez, the district attorney, presents the case with surgical precision. She's maybe 40, Latina, with dark hair pulled into a severe bun and a voice that could cut glass. Your Honor, the evidence is overwhelming. The defendants conspired to forge a legal document, a last will and testament, with the intent to defraud Ms. Bennett of her rightful inheritance valued at approximately $2.9 million. We have text messages documenting their planning. We have the forged will with a demonstrably fake signature. We have a confession from the notary they hired. We have testimony from the private investigator Mrs. Hayes hired when she discovered the conspiracy. And we have Mrs. Hayes's own journal documenting her awareness of the scheme and her efforts to protect Ms. Bennett. She presents each piece of evidence methodically, the real will versus the forged one, side by side. The text messages blown up on a screen for everyone to see. Eleanor's journal entries read aloud in Carmen's clear voice. I watch the judge's face. She's expressionless, but her eyes are sharp, taking in every detail. Brandon's attorney, a tired-looking public defender named Mitchell Ross, who clearly drew the short straw, tries to argue that it was a misunderstanding about which will was most recent. Judge Morrison cuts him off. Counsel, your client hired someone to forge a legal document and presented it to Ms. Bennett within hours of Mrs. Hayes's death, demanding she vacate the property in 24 hours. That's not a misunderstanding. That's premeditated fraud. Bail is set at $50,000 each. The gavel bangs. Final. Absolute. They can't make bail. None of them. They spend 3 days in county jail before Vanessa's husband, a man I've met exactly once, mortgages their house to scrape together enough money to get them out. The news coverage is relentless. Caregivers' rights in focus as fraud case proceeds. Elderly woman's deathbed. Protection of caregiver sparks criminal charges. The local paper runs a full feature about Eleanor's life, her independence, her intelligence, her relationship with me. They use photos from her church directory, the two of us at the Christmas potluck, at the Easter sunrise service, at the summer garden party. The community response is overwhelming. Eleanor's church delivers meals to Willowcrest every evening for 2 weeks. Neighbors stop by to check on me, to tell me they're praying for me. Former students I taught decades ago send messages on Facebook. We always knew you were the toughest teacher at Lincoln High, Ms. Bennett. Show them what that means. But Brandon's family strikes back hard. His mother appears on 3 different local news programs. Sophia Bennett is a con artist who preys on vulnerable seniors. She isolated my son's grandmother and manipulated her into changing her will. Eleanor wasn't in her right mind at the end. Vanessa's social media campaign intensifies. She posts old photos of Eleanor from years ago, looking confused or tired, with captions like, "Does this look like someone who could make sound legal decisions?" And, "My grandmother deserved better than to be exploited in her final years." I watch these posts on my laptop in Eleanor's library, my library, and my hands shake with rage. Margaret calls every evening at 7. Don't respond. Don't engage. They're trying to provoke you into saying something they can use against you. Stay quiet, stay dignified, let them hang themselves. 2 weeks after the preliminary hearing, Margaret calls with an update. Derek officially took the plea deal. He gave a full statement, 23 pages. He admits everything, the planning, the forgery, who did what, when it started. And he testified that Vanessa was the mastermind and Brandon was the inside man. Is that true? Mostly. Vanessa had the connections, the fake attorney, the notary, the real estate contacts. Brandon had the access to Eleanor and to you. Derek provided the financial expertise to make it look legitimate. They were all guilty, but Vanessa orchestrated it. What happens to Derek? 4 years. He'll probably serve 2.5 with good behavior, but his CPA license is permanently revoked. He'll never work in finance again. Small consolation. But something. The civil case moves forward on a parallel track. Margaret files a mountain of paperwork. Financial forensics showing Derek's embezzlement, documentation of Vanessa's real estate schemes, proof of Brandon's deliberate cultivation of our relationship to access Eleanor. That last one hurts the most. He joined the theater group specifically because Eleanor mentioned you were involved, Margaret tells me gently. Vanessa researched you first. Former teacher, widowed, compassionate, no close family nearby. You were perfect. Someone who'd care for Eleanor, keep her home, but someone they thought they could eventually intimidate or manipulate. 9 years. 9 years of what I thought was love, partnership, family, all calculated, all fake, all. Have you ever learned that your entire life was someone else's con? That moments you treasured were just part of a long game to steal from you? I sit in Eleanor's reading chair, my reading chair, and stare out at the garden she loved, and I cry for the Sophia who believed in Brandon, who thought she'd found a second chance at love and family. That Sophia is gone. The woman I am now is harder, angrier, but maybe stronger too. 3 weeks before trial, something shifts. Brandon's attorney withdraws from the case, citing irreconcilable differences with the client. He's replaced with another public defender, a young woman fresh out of law school who looks terrified. Vanessa's attorney starts making noises about a potential plea deal. They know they're going to lose, Margaret says. The question is whether they're smart enough to minimize the damage. The answer comes 2 days later. Vanessa's attorney requests a meeting. We meet in the same mediation room. Vanessa looks different. Older, harder, all the realtor polish stripped away. Her attorney is a sharp-faced man named Gordon Kent, who clearly wishes he'd never taken this case. My client is willing to plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for a recommended sentence of 5 years. Margaret doesn't even pretend to consider it. No, your client was the ringleader. She recruited Brandon and Derek. She hired the fake attorney. She had real estate developers lined up to turn Willowcrest into a boutique hotel before Eleanor was even dead. She's facing 15 years minimum, and that's exactly what we're going to ask for. Vanessa speaks for the first time, her voice brittle. I was trying to preserve family assets. By forging documents and committing fraud? Margaret's voice could freeze water. By conspiring to throw a woman who spent 9 years caring for your grandmother out on the street with 24 hours' notice? That's not preserving assets. That's theft, criminal theft. She's not even family, Vanessa snaps. Brandon is blood. I'm blood. Derek is blood. That house should go to family. I've been quiet until now, but something in her voice, the entitlement, the contempt, breaks my silence. You know what Eleanor told me once? I say quietly. Everyone turns to look at me. She said family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. You didn't show up for Sunday dinners or Tuesday crosswords or Thursday physical therapy. You didn't show up when she had nightmares, or when she was scared, or when she needed someone to hold her hand. You showed up when you wanted to know what the house was worth. That's not family, Vanessa. That's vultures circling. Vanessa's face goes red. You manipulated her. No, I say, standing up. I loved her. There's a difference. But you wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Margaret stands too. This meeting is over. See you in court. We walk out with Vanessa still sputtering behind us. Outside, Margaret is smiling. That was perfect. You stayed calm, factual, devastating. If you testify like that, the jury will love you. I thought you said not to engage. I said not to engage on social media where they could twist your words. In a controlled mediation with witnesses. That was exactly right. You showed them you're not afraid and you're not backing down. The trial starts in 1 week. 7 days to prepare for the moment when I'll have to sit in a witness box and tell my story to 12 strangers. When I'll have to relive every moment of betrayal while Brandon's attorney tries to paint me as a villain. Margaret and I spend those 7 days in final preparation. Mock examinations. Practice testimony. Going over every document, every timeline, every piece of evidence until I can recite it in my sleep. Remember, Margaret says the night before trial, you're not just fighting for Eleanor's estate. You're fighting for every caregiver who's been taken advantage of. Every person who's been made to feel small by people who should have valued them. This is bigger than just you. I think about that as I sit in Willowcrest the night before trial. About all the caregivers who give everything and get nothing, who are treated as servants instead of family, who are erased and dismissed and discarded. Eleanor gave me the weapons to fight back, the evidence, the will, the resources. But more than that, she gave me permission to be angry, permission to demand justice, permission to refuse to be made small. Tomorrow, I walk into that courtroom. Tomorrow, I tell the truth. Tomorrow, they face the consequences of what they tried to do. I'm ready. The trial starts on a Tuesday morning in mid-November, 6 weeks after Eleanor's death. The courtroom is packed, journalists in the back rows, Eleanor's church friends scattered throughout, curious community members who've followed the story. I sit next to Margaret at the plaintiff's table, wearing the navy blue suit Eleanor bought me 3 years ago for a church fundraiser. "You look dignified," she'd said, "like someone who means business." I hope she can see me now. Brandon, Vanessa, and Derek sit across the aisle with their attorneys. Brandon stares at his hands. Vanessa sits rigid, her face a mask. Derek looks like he's aged 10 years in 6 weeks. Judge Morrison enters, and we all stand. She surveys the courtroom with those sharp eyes, then nods. "Be seated. Let's begin." Carmen Rodriguez gives her opening statement first. She walks the jury through the timeline with devastating clarity. Eleanor's real will 3 years ago, the defendant's conspiracy, Brandon's calculated relationship with me, the forgery, the evidence Eleanor gathered, the lockbox, the confrontation. This case is about 3 people who decided an elderly woman's final wishes were less important than their greed, Carmen says, making eye contact with each juror. About family members who saw their grandmother not as a person deserving dignity, but as an obstacle to inheritance. And about a woman, Sophia Bennett, who gave 9 years of devoted care and was rewarded with lies, betrayal, and a 24-hour eviction notice. The evidence will show beyond any doubt that these defendants committed premeditated fraud. And the evidence will show that Eleanor Hayes knew exactly what they were doing and took steps to protect the woman who truly loved her. Brandon's attorney, Mitchell Ross, tries to create reasonable doubt. The defense will show that Mrs. Hayes was elderly and confused in her final years, that Ms. Bennett had unusual influence over a vulnerable woman, that the will she now claims is legitimate was executed under questionable circumstances. My client loved his grandmother. He's grieving, and he's being punished for trying to protect family assets. I watch the jury. A few look skeptical. Most look attentive, waiting for evidence. Carmen calls me as the first witness. Walking to the witness stand feels like crossing a battlefield. I'm sworn in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And I say I do, with a steady voice I don't quite feel. Carmen starts gentle. Background questions, my teaching career, my marriage and widowhood, meeting Brandon, meeting Eleanor. Can you describe your relationship with Mrs. Hayes? She was family, I say simply. Not by blood, but by choice. We read together every evening, did crossword puzzles. I helped her when her arthritis made daily tasks difficult. When her memory started slipping, I managed her medications, her appointments, everything she needed to stay in the home she loved with dignity and independence. Was this arrangement supposed to be permanent? No. It started as temporary. But over time, we became each other's family. I loved her. She told me many times she loved me. We were companions, friends, family in every way that mattered. Carmen walks me through the 9 years, the daily care. Eleanor's sharp mind, even as her body failed. The trust between us. Then the tone shifts. When did you first notice suspicious behavior from the defendants? About 2 years before Eleanor died. Vanessa and Derek started visiting frequently after years of absence. They'd ask Eleanor questions about the house value, her investments. Eleanor would get anxious after these visits. She'd tell me she felt like they were measuring her life to see what it was worth. Objection, hearsay, Ross calls out. Your Honor, this goes to the victim's state of mind and the defendant's pattern of behavior, Carmen responds. I'll allow it. Continue, Ms. Bennett. I describe finding missing documents. Derek's hours in Eleanor's office, Vanessa photographing every room, Eleanor's growing fear. 2 weeks before she died, Eleanor gave me a lockbox and a key. She told me to hide it and open it after she was gone. She said, "Don't let them take it, any of it." She knew what they were planning. Carmen introduces the lockbox contents as evidence. Eleanor's journal is passed to the jury. Several jurors lean forward, reading Eleanor's handwriting, her documentation of the conspiracy. What happened the night Mrs. Hayes died? I take a deep breath. I was at the hospital for 18 hours. Eleanor died at 8:47 p.m. I held her hand and sang to her until the end. When I came home around 11 p.m., Brandon, Vanessa, Derek, and a man I'd never met were sitting in my bedroom. They presented what they claimed was Eleanor's will, leaving everything to Brandon and giving me $1,500. They told me I had 24 hours to leave. How did that make you feel? Like I'd been erased. Like 9 years meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. My voice cracks slightly. I'd just lost someone I loved. And instead of grief, instead of comfort, I was being thrown out of my home by people I thought cared about me. What did you do? I packed a bag and left, went to a motel, and I opened the lockbox. Carmen walks me through the discovery, the real will, Eleanor's letter, the text messages, the evidence of years of planning. The courtroom is completely silent. Even the journalists have stopped typing. Ms. Bennett, did you manipulate Eleanor Hayes into changing her will? No. Eleanor changed her will 3 years ago after discovering Brandon and his cousins were planning to forge documents. I didn't even know she'd done it until after she died. Did you isolate Eleanor from her family? No. Her family rarely visited until they wanted something. I encouraged Eleanor to stay connected with her church, her neighbors, her friends. She had an active social life until her health declined. Why do you think Eleanor left you her estate? I look at the jury. Because I showed up. Every single day for 9 years. Not because I expected inheritance. I never asked for anything except the privilege of caring for her. But because she needed someone, and I loved her. That's what family does. Several jurors are wiping their eyes. The cross-examination is brutal. Mitchell Ross tries every angle Margaret prepared me for. Isn't it true you moved in with Mrs. Hayes specifically to gain access to her assets? No, I moved in to help her stay in the home she loved. But you benefited financially, didn't you? Free room and board for 9 years? I provided 24-hour care for 9 years. The market rate for live-in care with my level of responsibility would be approximately $5,000 per month. That's over $500,000 in unpaid labor. I didn't benefit financially. I sacrificed financially. Margaret taught me that response. It lands hard. The jury shifts, several nodding. You expect us to believe you never discussed inheritance with Mrs. Hayes? We discussed her wishes for certain items, her china, her books. But we didn't discuss legal inheritance because I never expected to inherit. I expected to care for her until she died and then return to my own life. Yet here you are, claiming a multi-million-dollar estate. I'm not claiming it. Eleanor left it to me. There's a difference. Ross tries to paint Eleanor as mentally declining, confused, vulnerable. Carmen objects repeatedly. The judge sustains most of them. Finally, Ross asks, isn't it possible Mrs. Hayes was confused when she changed her will? That she wasn't in her right mind? Have you read her journal? I ask quietly. The one she kept for 3 years documenting your client's conspiracy? Does that sound like someone who wasn't in her right mind? Eleanor was sharp until the day she died. Sharp enough to know exactly what her family was planning. Sharp enough to protect me from it. Ross has no response. He sits down. Carmen calls Derek next. He's already pleaded guilty, so his testimony is pure prosecution. He admits everything: the planning sessions at Vanessa's house, the decision to forge a will, hiring Stuart Chambers for $5,000, forging Eleanor's signature using photographs as reference, planning the bedroom confrontation to intimidate me into leaving quietly. "Why did you do it?" Carmen asks. Derek's voice is barely audible. "Because Vanessa said it would be easy money, that Sophia was nobody, just a caregiver, and wouldn't fight back. We thought we were entitled to it because we were blood family." He looks at me for the first time. "We were wrong. So wrong." "Why were you wrong?" "Because Sophia earned it. She loved Gran every day for 9 years. We just wanted her money. That's not family. That's theft. And I'm ashamed." It's the only genuine emotion I've seen from any of them. The forensic document examiner testifies next. He displays Eleanor's real signature versus the forged one on a large screen, points out the pressure differences, the angle inconsistencies, the tremor patterns that don't match. "This signature was not written by Eleanor Hayes," he states definitively. "It's not even a sophisticated forgery. Anyone with basic training could identify this as fraudulent within minutes." Robert Pacheco, the private investigator, describes Eleanor hiring him, installing monitoring software, documenting the conspiracy, Eleanor's crystal-clear instructions and sharp mental acuity during their meetings. "Was Mrs. Hayes mentally competent when you worked with her?" "Completely. One of the sharpest 84-year-olds I've ever met. She knew exactly what her family was doing and exactly how to build a case against them." Margaret Chen testifies about Eleanor calling her 3 years ago, about drafting the new will, about Eleanor's explicit instructions. "Did Mrs. Hayes express any doubt about her decision to leave everything to Ms. Bennett?" "None whatsoever. She said, 'Sophia is my real family. Brandon only loves what I own.' Those were her exact words." Stuart Chambers, the fake attorney, testifies as part of his plea deal. He admits Brandon and Vanessa hired him to create backdated estate documents, that he forged the notary seal, that he never met Eleanor, never verified her mental capacity, never did any legitimate estate work. "Why did you do it?" "They offered me $10,000, and I needed the money. I knew it was illegal. I did it anyway. I'm sorry." Sorry doesn't erase the crime, but it destroys any remaining defense. Brandon doesn't testify. Ross advises against it. Anything Brandon says will only make things worse. Vanessa testifies in her own defense. It's a disaster. She's defensive, entitled, aggressive. Claims she was protecting family assets from a manipulative outsider. Insists Eleanor was confused and easily influenced. Says she had buyers lined up for Willowcrest because Gran would have wanted the family to benefit. "Did your grandmother ever tell you she wanted you to sell her home?" Carmen asks on cross-examination. "Well, no, but did she ever tell you she wanted to leave you her estate?" "Not specifically, but blood family should answer the question. Did Eleanor Hayes ever tell you she wanted you to inherit?" Vanessa's silence is damning. "In fact, she left you exactly $1 to make clear your exclusion was intentional, correct? That's because Sophia manipulated. You forged a legal document to steal a multi-million-dollar estate from a woman who spent 9 years caring for your grandmother. That's not protection, that's theft. No further questions." Vanessa leaves the stand looking shaken. Closing arguments are swift. Carmen summarizes the evidence. Eleanor Hayes was brilliant, sharp, and aware. She knew her family was planning to betray her and Ms. Bennett. So she protected Sophia the only way she could, with evidence, with documentation, with a real will that reflected her true wishes. The defendants didn't just commit fraud. They tried to erase an elderly woman's final act of love for the person who truly cared for her. Find them guilty, honor Eleanor's wishes, deliver justice. Ross tries to create doubt about Eleanor's mental state, about whether I had undue influence. It falls flat. The evidence is too strong, too clear, too overwhelming. The jury deliberates for 5 hours. We wait in a conference room. Margaret works on her laptop. I stare out the window, unable to eat, unable to think. At 4:37 p.m., the bailiff calls us back. The jury has reached a verdict. We file back into the courtroom. My heart is hammering so hard I think everyone can hear it. The jury foreman stands, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and kind eyes. In the matter of the state versus Brandon Hayes, Vanessa Hayes Morrison, and Derek Hayes, on the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of forgery of legal documents, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of attempted theft by deception, how do you find? Guilty. Guilty on all counts, all three defendants. Brandon puts his head in his hands. Vanessa stares straight ahead, her face white. Derek starts crying. Judge Morrison bangs her gavel. Sentencing will be in 3 weeks. Until then, defendants will remain out on bail with monitoring. This court is adjourned. The courtroom erupts. Eleanor's church friends are crying and hugging. Journalists rush for the doors to file stories. Margaret squeezes my hand. "You won," she says. "Eleanor's wishes will be honored." I should feel triumphant. Instead, I feel empty, exhausted. 9 years of my life, 9 years I thought were building towards something real, revealed as lies. But I also feel something else, something Eleanor would recognize. I feel free, free from people who never valued me, free from manipulation and lies. Free to honor the woman who truly loved me by living the life she wanted me to have. As they lead Brandon out of the courtroom, he looks at me one last time. His eyes are pleading, broken. I look away. I'm done being small. After the verdict, I sit in the courtroom for a long time after everyone else has left. The journalists rushed out to file their stories. Eleanor's church friends hugged me and promised to bring dinner. Margaret went to file paperwork. The bailiff gently tells me they're closing up for the night. I drive back to Willowcrest, my home now, legally and finally, and sit in Eleanor's reading chair. My reading chair. The house is quiet, too quiet. For 9 years, this house was filled with Eleanor's presence, her voice calling for me, the sound of her walker on the hardwood, her laughter when I read something funny aloud. Now it's just mine. And I don't know if that's a gift or a loss. I cry, not for Brandon or Vanessa or Derek, for Eleanor. For the fact that she had to spend her final years documenting betrayal instead of just being loved. For the fact that her own family saw her as nothing more than an asset to liquidate. And maybe I cry a little for the Sophia I used to be. The one who believed in second chances and love conquering age differences and building new families. That Sophia died the night I came home to find 4 people waiting to erase her. The woman I am now is harder, wiser, maybe better, maybe just more tired. 3 weeks later, I'm back in the same courtroom for sentencing. Judge Morrison doesn't waste time. "Mr. Hayes, Ms. Hayes Morrison, Mr. Hayes, you conspired to defraud a woman who gave 9 years of devoted care to your grandmother. You forged legal documents. You attempted to steal a multi-million-dollar estate. You tried to render Ms. Bennett homeless within 24 hours of Mrs. Hayes's death. And you did all of this while your grandmother was dying, while she was vulnerable, while she deserved peace and dignity." She looks at each of them in turn. "Mr. Brandon Hayes, I sentence you to 12 years in federal prison. Ms. Vanessa Hayes Morrison, I sentence you to 10 years. Mr. Derek Hayes, in light of your cooperation, I sentence you to 4 years with credit for time served." 12 years, 10 years, 4 years. Brandon's mother screams from the gallery. Vanessa's face crumples. Derek just nods, like he expected it. The civil judgment comes 2 days later. Margaret calls with the news. "The court awarded you the full estate value plus $200,000 in damages, and they ordered wage garnishment for Brandon and Vanessa after they're released, 20% of any income for the rest of their lives." "They'll never recover from this," I say quietly. "No," Margaret agrees. "They won't. and that's the point. Actions have consequences. They tried to destroy you, and instead, they destroyed themselves. I should feel satisfaction. Mostly, I just feel exhausted. 6 months after the trial, I'm sitting on the wraparound porch with my morning coffee, doing the Sunday crossword puzzle. Eleanor's church friends still visit regularly. My former teaching colleague Carol comes for dinner every Wednesday. I've started volunteering at a senior advocacy center, helping caregivers understand their legal rights. The house is mine, but I've made changes. Painted the guest room, planted new roses in Eleanor's garden, pink ones, her favorite. Donated her clothes to charity, but kept a few items, her reading glasses, her favorite shawl, the handwritten cookbook with pie crust recipes. I sold some of the investment portfolio and set up a scholarship fund at my old high school. The Eleanor Hayes Scholarship for students who plan to study nursing or social work. Students who want to care for people. Eleanor would have loved that. I hear from Derek once, about a year after sentencing. A short letter forwarded through Margaret. Ms. Bennett, I know I have no right to contact you. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. But I need you to know that I think about what we did every single day. About how we treated you. About Gran's last years being filled with fear because of us. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm genuinely sorry. I don't respond. Some things don't deserve response. I never hear from Brandon or Vanessa. I see occasional updates through mutual acquaintances. Vanessa's husband divorced her. She lost her real estate license. Brandon's mother still posts on social media about how I destroyed her son's life, but fewer and fewer people engage with her bitterness. I think about Brandon sometimes. 9 years is a long time to share your life with someone, even if it was built on lies. I wonder if any of it was real. The laughter, the quiet moments, the mundane domesticity of shared breakfasts. I'll never know. And eventually, I realize I don't need to know. What was real was Eleanor. The love between us, the friendship, the family we chose to be for each other. On the 1-year anniversary of her death, I visit her grave. Simple headstone, like she wanted. Eleanor Margaret Hayes. She chose her family wisely. I chose mine wisely, too. She taught me that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about showing up. It's about love expressed in crossword puzzles and medication schedules and hand-holding during scary medical appointments. I'm 68 now. I live alone in a beautiful Victorian house that represents both the best and worst of my life. The best because Eleanor loved me enough to protect me even after death. The worst because the betrayal revealed how wrong I'd been about people I thought loved me. But I'm not lonely. I have my church community, my volunteering work, former students who email me about their lives, neighbors who've become friends, a life that's mine, built on truth instead of lies. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if Eleanor hadn't given me that lockbox. If I just accepted the $1,500 and walked away, I'd probably be living in a small apartment somewhere, still believing Brandon loved me, still thinking I was worth so little. Eleanor saved me, not just financially, but spiritually. She showed me I was worth fighting for, worth protecting, worth loving, and she taught me the most important lesson: don't let anyone make you small. I think about that every morning when I wake up in this house. Every time I sign a check or make a decision or simply exist in the space Eleanor wanted me to have. I'm not small. I never was. I was just surrounded by people who needed me to be small so they could feel big. Not anymore. If you're watching this and you've ever been made to feel small by people who should have valued you, listen to me. You deserve better. You deserve to be seen and loved and respected. And if the people around you can't do that, find new people. Choose your own family. Don't let anyone erase you. Eleanor used to say, "The best revenge is living well." I didn't understand that until now. Living well isn't about wealth or winning or proving anything to anyone. It's about honoring yourself. About building a life that reflects your values. about refusing to be diminished. I'm living well now. Every morning with my coffee and crossword puzzle, I feel Eleanor's presence. Not haunting, celebrating. Celebrating that her final act of love meant something, that I fought back, that I won. To everyone who followed this story, who sent messages of support, who shared their own experiences, thank you. Your stories matter. Your dignity matters. You matter. And to anyone facing something similar, document everything, trust your instincts, and don't be afraid to fight for what's rightfully yours. You're stronger than you know. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Share your experiences in the comments. Have you ever dealt with family betrayal? How did you handle it? Your story might help someone else who needs to hear they're not alone. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories reach. I'm Sophia Bennett. I'm 68 years old. I'm a former teacher, a former caregiver, and a survivor of family fraud. But most importantly, I'm a woman who refused to be made small. And I'm living the life Eleanor wanted me to have. Big, bold, and unapologetically mine. Thank you for listening.